I've been a nutritionist for 40 years. I have a grandfather who is a corn farmer. I have another grandfather who grew all his food because that's what they did back then. I had a mother who was very interested in growing food. But for some reason, I was more interested in, once it got to the plate, what were the most important things that we should do and what we should eat. But about 10 years ago, I had issues with wheat and I stopped eating it, but I also decided to do some research about wheat and to find out, well, why all of a sudden is wheat an issue to me? And in that 2 years that I researched it and then created the documentary, What's with Wheat, I realized that our agricultural practices have a lot to be desired. That for some reason we believe it's okay to put chemicals on our food and think that that's okay for humans, the soil and the planet. So as I've learnt more about agricultural practices, I've become more of a person who really pushes regenerative farming. In actual fact, my nutrition summit that I do every year, I like to have one person who talks on regenerative farming. Last year we had Charles Massey. This year we had Zach Bush booked in, and he's also booked in for next year. And these are people who are talking about the state of our soil and how important the soil is in order for us to have healthy food so that we have all the nutrition that we need in order to be the healthiest versions of ourselves. So what is healthy soil? Healthy soil is soil that has lots of microbes in it. A bit like your gut bacteria needs lots of microbes, so does the soil. So all those microbes, what they do is that they converse with each other. They absorb water. And what they're doing is holding the soil and the water together. They carbon capture. They also help the plants get the nutrition that they need so that they are not attacked by pests, and that the right herbs or weeds or whatever it is that is growing in their position. So the soil actually speaks to plants and says, this is what I need right now. I need a plant that burrows deep and will make sure that we separate the soil so it's not so muddy and cluggy. So it's quite incredible once you start to learn about regenerative farming and how we use animals and plants in order not to use chemicals. And when you use regenerative farming and you start to get food off the land, and it doesn't have to be farming, it can be in your backyard. And we have an absolutely wonderful course in the Nutrition Academy called The Incredible Edible Garden, which teaches you how to grow foods in your backyard that are not only nutritious, but taste different. So I had a couple of friends up at my farm recently, and I went out and I picked everything. So I got the sweet potato, I had all the lettuces and the herbs, the tomatoes, the flowers, the nasturtiums, canna. I also picked up the eggs from the chickens, and I made them a meal that was solely from my property. And I remember one of the girls just sitting there going, I didn't know lettuce tasted like this. I didn't know that things could taste so good. And that's because for 5 years on our farm, we have done regenerative farming. We've used no chemicals whatsoever. And it's frustrating. It can be frustrating because, we had a dry period and then we had a wet period, and then any seeds that were viable, weeds as we call them, but I've been told that I should rename them opportunists. They come in and they're opportunistic and in the way that they help the soil. So I've learned to live by that. But I must admit that when you do this and you eat these foods, then the need for supplementation is just not there. You don't have the maladies that everybody seems to be having. You don't get the common cold. You seem to have that strength and that immunity that the body requires in order to be the healthiest version that it can be of itself. So think about when you go to a grocery store, you can't talk to your farmer. Most people know who their doctor is, but they don't know who their farmer is. So I'm, number one, a regenerative farmer myself, but I also buy from regenerative farmers. So if I'm not growing something and I need it, I will buy from my local farmer. And because I've spoken to him, I've been to his farm, I know what he grows and how he grows it and his passion and his love for regen farming. Now this is growing. This is growing worldwide. Farmers are realizing that the chemicals that they are using are actually not giving them the yield that they need, the healthy food that they need. And there, you know, and many of our farmers that use chemicals are coming down with a farmer's cancer, which is called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's what many doctors are starting to call it. And there's a real link between one of our major herbicides that are sprayed, called Roundup or glyphosate, which is the main ingredient, and this non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But that's one chemical. Do you know that our supermarket screen that is done on foods to make sure that those foods don't have too many chemicals in it, but there are chemicals in it, has 144 chemicals that they screen for? But glyphosate is not one of the chemicals that they screen for. So we don't actually know how much we're consuming. And that, like I said, that's one chemical. There's dicamba and 2,4-D and paquat and atrazine and chlorpyrifos. And, you know, I'm just naming off a few that I have researched. I don't know them all, but I can tell you this, that I'm not prepared to have chemicals on my food. I am willing to do what it takes in order to find a farmer at my farmer's market that I can speak to and find out what they do and find out their ethics. So agriculture, modern agricultural practices have a really bad influence on not only the nutrition of our food, but the amount of chemicals that are in it. So hunt out your regenerative farmer, go to your farmer's market, start talking to them, finding out all about it, or grow your own food and use our incredible edible garden course in the Nutrition Academy in order to help you grow the most nutritious foods for you and your family. So to make sure that you're the healthiest version of yourself. I'll talk to you in the next video.